So here's an example from education. You'll see that this state-level school system wants to distribute new instructional materials to all 65,000 teachers. How is it actually going to happen? Well, it turns out distribution has kind of 4 pathways. Some teachers will download it from the website. Some teachers are going to be trained directly by their head teachers, what we call principals in the US, and they're going to be the ones who give them the materials. And then there are some teachers who are actually going to be trained by district officials, curriculum directors or committees who work through coaches or directly to give the new materials to teachers. You can see the chain, how it works backwards to regional centers and ultimately to a single curriculum and instruction team and back to the chief, which is our equivalent of a minister for that Ministry of Education. So you can see here a very clear map of how things are supposed to happen. But you can also see, you can even begin, those of you who work in education systems, to start to wonder, wait a minute, where could delivery go wrong? And drawing this map is at least in part for the purpose of figuring that out and triggering your sense of where things could go wrong. So in this system, they identified 3 things that could go wrong. Turns out that the regional centers don't have a very good relationship with the district folks and the curriculum directors that work there. So that's a potentially weak link in the chain. Secondly, in smaller districts, well, if we rely on the head teacher or the principal, that might be difficult because head teachers and principals have a lot going on. They're not just here to distribute your instructional materials for your program, so they could be a bottleneck. They might not get to it at the pace that we want them to. Thirdly, there's a question of whether teachers will even use the website. We're not quite sure whether that'll happen because we've never asked them to do it before. So you can see here from looking at the chain 3 very specific weak links that are identified that become problems for us to solve while we do the planning rather than problems that we discover 2 years from now when it's too late to do anything about it. So that's one of the benefits of having a delivery chain defined well. So when you're identifying risks, there are a couple of different things you could consider. Number 1, are there specific relationships on the delivery chain that are a problem, like our regional directors with our district curriculum people? What's the quality of each relationship? Do any of them pose a challenge? Secondly, are we confident about the capacity of each of the actors on the chain? Do we need to do something to strengthen any of those roles that people are playing? That's actually a huge part of the delivery chain, is asking, does each actor have what they need in order to play the role we're asking them to play? And if not, what are we going to do about that? Third is complexity. Many of you will try to draw the delivery chain and you will find that it's a confusing mess. Lots of lines leading to lots of places. Sometimes that's unavoidable. Life is complicated. But it's also true that when possible, you should try to simplify your delivery chain. Figure out what the most direct route between you and the student or you and the patient ought to be, and try to draw the chain that way. Fourth, funding. Does funding match what you're expecting the delivery chain to do? If not, how can you fix that? And finally, choke points. This is the example of the head teacher we talked about in the last slide. Are there certain actors we are depending on who are overburdened and who might not be reliable for that reason? So risk analysis is a really, really important function of the delivery chain. And then another important function is figuring out where else we're going to measure progress. In fact, sometimes you'll find that there are risks you identify and there's not much you can do about them. You can't redesign the chain. You can't do much to strengthen the relationship. But what you can do is measure whether the thing that you said was going to happen is actually happening. So you can draw the delivery chain and you can ask for each link in the chain, where are the things that I want to measure? And you can see how our example school system here has done that. They said, I want to know how many districts are being trained by the regional centers. I want to collect that data. I want to collect data on how many teachers have gotten training on these instructional materials. I definitely want to collect data on teacher usage of the website. I want to check to see which teachers are actually using the materials and changing their behavior. This is probably the most important one, right? Are teachers actually doing something differently with the materials? That's sort of metrics 4 and 5 that you see here. And then, of course, finally, what you ultimately want to know is, did it make a difference for students? And so what you can see there is the beginnings of sort of a spectrum of drawing and designing feedback loops for your strategy using the delivery chain. More formally, that spectrum looks like this. You're asking on the one end of the spectrum, What are the processes, the inputs? Did those things happen or not? Then you're asking, well, did the front line, the teacher, the healthcare worker, or other, did they like it? Basically, were they satisfied with what you gave them and how you equipped them, how you trained them? Thirdly, did they demonstrate different knowledge? If you were to quiz them about what you expect them to do, could they tell you? Right? In our vaccination example from prior, does the health worker know that there is a vaccination program and what they're expected to do? Do they know how to do it if that was part of the training? And so on and so forth. Fourthly, there's just a question of observation. Do we actually observe behavior changing? Sometimes you can collect this quantitatively. Sometimes you just have to go out to the front line and see for yourself. And then finally, at the other end of the spectrum is impact on outcomes. Do we actually see people experiencing better and different lives as a result of this?